Hang on to a dream. Did you hear that? I heard the other day someone tell me that if you believe in freedom and you believe in the United States and you believe all this and that, maybe you are dreaming because you're asleep. I mean, you got to wake up. You just heard the wake-up call. We need to wake up, and we need to stop dreaming, and we need to start producing. We need to start producing our votes for this country. We need to get rid of these morons that have been leading us for decades now. We got a bunch of idiots running this place, like Trump says. Now, I think we've had a lot of exposure here. I think that the true colors are going to come out, and everything's going to be blatantly obvious. We have these strange people that have been elected in office saying things all almost in lockstep, and they think they got Trump now big time, and they're making these accusations that he's not qualified to be president because he doesn't know the Constitution. He's proposing to not let these Muslims into the country. And you have idiots out there that have a position of power, senators, congressmen, and all this, and they're making statements like, hasn't Trump ever heard of the Fifth Amendment? Yeah, well, idiot, haven't you ever heard that Muslims don't have the Constitution? Only the people in this country that are citizens have the Constitution? What is he talking about? As usual, he doesn't have a clue what he's talking about. Trump knows what he's talking about. We have no reason to let these people into the country. They have no power over us. Who are these people? Keep them the hell out of here until they can prove justification for coming into this country. You don't just get to go wherever you want in this world. You should be able to, but you don't. I mean, what other country can just march in and take over? Buy this, buy that. Or say you need free this and free that. I want health care. I want this. I want that. Where else can you go and do that? No place. But we have idiot leaders that say, hasn't he ever heard of the Fifth Amendment? What the hell does the Fifth Amendment have to do with a Syrian refugee? Can you tell me that, you idiot senator or congressman, whoever the hell said that? I don't even know, because I tell you what, I don't pay attention to these people. They're morons. Now, the other side of this equation, the hard part to fathom in a way, but you have to understand the basics and why it's happening, is you've got Carly Fiorina, to mention one. Everybody on the Republican side, except for Cruz, is saying things like Trump is not qualified to be president. He should just get out of the race. That's what they're saying. Why? Because he doesn't know. He wants to take a pause on letting these Muslims into this country until we can figure out who the hell they are. What a radical idea this guy has. My God. You know why that's unconstitutional, as these idiots are saying? Because it's not in the Constitution. Nobody outside of this country has any rights under our Constitution. So where's Trump wrong? He's saying it's unconstitutional to let him into the country. That's what's unconstitutional. And there was another president, or several of them actually, but another one, a certain province that's still kicking, is Jimmy Carter. He did this. When we were having that Iranian stuff going on, he refused to allow any Iranians into the country, just closed the borders, paused, if you will, and then he went to the colleges, and everyone that was here from Iran had to go and register like a draft almost. And they had to go sign up and qualify to stay in this country. And I think they found, I don't want to pick a number off the top of my head, but thousands, let's say that, of these Iranian students, visas had expired, and they were actually in this country overstaying their stay. So a lot of them were exported back to their countries. Jimmy Carter did that. Jimmy Carter went on TV. Jimmy Carter professed this great thing that he was going to do. He was proud of it. Look at this. We're going to get these people out of here. Everybody was applauding him. What a great idea, right? But now you have a man running that has his own money, that can't be bought, and now everybody's bitching about Trump making the exact same thing that Carter said. Of course, Trump isn't president yet. Carter was, which is even more so in Trump's favor, because the current president says he can't do it. He does everything else with his pen and his phone. Why can't he keep the Muslims out? Or pause. You know why? Because he is a Muslim. That's why. He doesn't want to get these people out. Because whether he's a Muslim or not, let's not argue semantics. Let's argue this. His propensity is Muslim leaning. His father was a Muslim. And I'm not even too sure we know who his right father is, but the odds are 99% that he was Muslim. And then how about the comment in his own book, oh, there's nothing more beautiful than a Muslim sunrise. I mean, you know, the guy's a Muslim. Whether he's officially registered as a Muslim or not, there's nothing official about this guy anyways. He's not even 100% black. And I guarantee you when his transcripts, his college transcripts show up, or his entrance paperwork, or whatever you want to call it, I guarantee you, he registered at these umpteen universities that somehow he got accepted as a foreign exchange student. How much you want to bet? I'll bet anything. Call me up. Make the bet right now. 702-983-0711. Give us a call. Take me up on that. Even money. Easy pickings, right? I bet someday we'll find out this stuff. And maybe I think Trump's and a lot of people already know what it is. But they're not making a big issue out of it because Obama's done anyways. He needs to be done sooner rather than later. I don't know if we can last this 1 year with him still in power. That's the scary part. What is this guy going to try to do? The only good things about this is we know who he is. We know where he goes. And we know he's not really packing heat. He's got a lot of heat around him, but I don't think he's packing any heat. And he's not going to come out of the woodwork on us like those people did in San Bernardino. Nobody expected that because they weren't watching these people. Well, we watch Obama. We know, except for when Benghazi was going on, we usually know where he is. Of course, he was hiding during that event because he didn't want to have to declare he'd do anything about it. And he has those people on the run. He'd already beaten Al-Qaeda. You know, bin Laden was dead and GM was alive. But that was a false statement, as all the statements that come out of Obama's mouth are. They're all false. So we need to wake up. We need to look at the facts, try to analyze them a little bit, and see what you can ascertain as the truth. These liberal progressives are so far out there now. They're so used to lying, they will say anything. And it shouldn't be too hard, even for the low information people, to put two and two together. Nothing has worked out. For what they've said, nothing has worked out. Now, why is everybody kicking and screaming about Trump? Everybody, including the Republicans. Why? Because the Republican leaders, if you will, the entrenched old society, don't want Trump because they have no control over the guy. None whatsoever. That's what that little signature deal was with Trump. Had to sign a thing that he won't run third party, but still, I think that was even subject to as long as the Republicans support him. Don't have to support back them necessarily, but not go against them. They're all now violating that contract that they signed. Every single one of them is saying Trump's not electable because of his constitutional beliefs. Well, let me tell you something. He's more right than anybody else. Anybody. And that includes the current president. That includes the spokesman, that Josh Earnest. What a name that is. But anyways, he's out on the stage the other day in the podium there at the news conference telling people that Trump is not qualified to be president because of his statements about pausing to let the Muslims in here. Could anything be more wrong than that? I mean, just think about it. Who the hell are these people that we have to be obligated to take them into the country? We're going to pause. If you don't like it, tough. Go back to where you came from. We're under no obligation to be humanistic or whatever the hell those words are they throw around. These people are trying to kill us, and we have proof of that. San Bernardino. How much proof do we need? Do we have to wait for the next one? The one after that? The one after that? These are coming. There's going to be one after another, and we have no idea who these people are. Homeland Security, what a misnomer that is. Homeland insecurity. And under Obama, this country's never going to be secure because he's a terrorist himself and he wants to fundamentally change America, remember? Okay, my question back then was, change it from what? We're the leading nation. We're the most productive. We have the best standard of living. We have the highest GMP. What are you going to change? Well, we found out he's going to try to make it a third world country. And that's the path he's been going down since he's been elected. And we've seen the results. Some people, they can't figure out things on their own. They don't know if their mashed potatoes taste good or not. They have to be told. Gee, does this taste good? I don't know. I mean, these people are very strange people. Well, I don't have to be told. I can figure things out on my own. I knew Obama was one gigantic empty suit. He had nothing to say. If his teleprompter wasn't working, he couldn't say anything. And he was going to be a big, big loser. Rush Limbaugh hoped he failed, and I was 100% with him. I can understand his sentiments, because if this guy's successful in fundamentally changing America, we are in trouble. And we're seeing the results of that. All over the world, we're not respected. Obama runs around on his apology tour, bowing to other leaders, several of our enemies. We have our leader over there bowing to these foreign leaders. That's real respectful, huh? And another thing that I noticed, when Obama was over there in Russia one time and he was talking to one of Putin's henchmen there, and the mic was live and he didn't know it, and Obama's leaning over talking to Vladimir II, or whoever that guy was, saying, you tell Vladimir that when I'm reelected, I'll have a lot more power, and I will be able to work something out and get something. Yeah, what is this? Do you think that Putin respects that guy? Here's a guy talking under his breath to one of his henchmen. Is that respectful? Is that someone you're going to be afraid of? You laugh at that type of person. Jesus Christ, it's pathetic. Obama is not a leader. He has no clue what he's doing, none whatsoever. He draws a line in the sand. How did that work out? Everything the man's done does not work out. And part of that reason is because he doesn't know what he's doing. It takes leadership, it takes experience, and it takes having been over a few humps in your life to know which road to take. As the Y in the road comes up, Obama's never been on the road, let alone what turn to take. He doesn't have a clue. Hillary Clinton, what has she ever done except having bad results? Secretary of State, she's the worst Secretary of State this country's ever had. And now she thinks she can follow Obama, be swept into the White House, because the Democrats think that she's entitled somehow. Entitled to what? Her president was the most despicable president we've ever had. Scandal after scandal after scandal. Gate. FBI gate, travel gate, this gate, Rose Law Firm gate. Everything was a gate. Whitewater gate. Everything gate. I think it had 27 to 28 gates. Vince Foster gate. I mean, do we want more of this? These Clintons are despicable, and they need to be retired permanently. Send them to the pasture. I'll be fine with some other country as far as I'm concerned. These people are liars and cheaters. They need to go, and we need to help them along the way, because they'll never go without kicking and screaming. And that's the problem that this country's going to face. It's going to take a rising up movement of the populace to, like they're doing in Washington right now. I mean, not Washington, Chicago. There's 1,000 people or better in the streets marching on Rahm Emanuel, trying to kick his ass out of the mayorship, because there's another guy, an Obama dude, that doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And even Chicagoans are fed up. And with the mismanagement. I mean, that shooting that we got to see the tape of, the dash cam or whatever that cop had in his car, showed the whole thing very clearly of them shooting this guy in the street. He was kind of walking away. The guy wasn't really threatening in any way. He may have had a knife on him or something, and I'm not too sure about that. But there were like 5 or 6 cops standing around with their guns pointed at this guy. He was a threat? I mean, if these cops that go to target practice every so often, I don't know what the criteria is, but these guys, I would say, I would bet for the most part, are probably pretty good shots. Now, if the guy's walking down the street, why don't you shoot out an ankle or something? Why do you have to put 16 bullets into this guy? And what kind of gun did that one cop supposedly have that had 16 fire capability? In one gun? Or with 4 or 5 of those other cops that were pointing their weapons at this guy, do a reflex action. When one cop started to shoot, they started to shoot. I can see that. I can understand that. Kind of like if you run down the street in your car and you see a couple deers on the side of the road, one will run one way, one will run the other way. It's a reflex action. When you start to hear shooting and you're a cop and you have your gun in your hand with your finger on the trigger, don't you start to shoot too? I can understand that. That would make sense to me. So when's that going to come out? I bet those 16 bullets didn't come from the same gun. I mean, why don't people ask these questions? Am I the only one that can ask questions like that? It's amazing. But anyway, I think we're at a crossroads here, or we certainly will be. If we're not there yet, we will be, where you got Donald Trump making a clear, common sense statement. Let's pause and not let any of these people into this country until we're sure what we got. That's what he said. That's exactly what he said. Now here comes the mainstream media and all the sharks swimming around trying to get rid of this guy because he threatens them and their very existence. So they start changing the words around, take a word here, a word there, put them together, something he never said. And now we're violating constitutional rights somehow. Where are the constitutional rights that we're violating? Who? It's not these undocumented people trying to get into the country. They don't have any rights. So who are we violating? These people are such idiots that they're blatantly attacking Trump because of who Trump is, the fact that he's not controlled by anybody, and he's saying what the people of this country want to hear. He's the extreme, if you will, Tea Party leader. He's the guy that's way beyond the Tea Party. They had a hard time destroying the Tea Party, these other two parties, because they didn't know who to go after. If there was one person in charge of the Tea Party, they would have got him, like what they've done to Carson lately. They've knocked him down in the polls by saying mostly false stuff about him. And they could go after a person. They'll get you every single time, except they won't be able to get at Trump because Trump doesn't care about the media. He doesn't answer questions from the media. They want to make up these stories, spin it around, do this or that. Trump points to them, doubles down on what he said, and laughs at them. And he's winning. You mark my words, it'll come out in the next few days. The constitutional issue, just like when he raised the fact of the anchor babies weren't legal citizens, and nobody can get that through their head, that the Wang ruling from the Supreme Court back in 1800-something, because of Chinese railroad workers, is not applicable. It's a totally different situation. Those Chinese mother and father, parents, that were in this country were here legally because they were working on the railroad. So they hadn't snuck over the border. No, they were here. And then when the job was done, they took the baby that they had while they were here, and they went back home to China. So that's completely inapplicable. You have a situation here with these anchor babies where illegal aliens came in underground, over the fence, however they by boat, however they got into this country, they got here and did not go through the channels like you're supposed to. And then they had a baby. And now these morons in this country think that the baby, because by virtue of having been born here, is a United States citizen. That's not true. Because the law reads, you have to be under the jurisdiction of the United States. Parties that came in here illegally are not legally in the jurisdiction of the United States. They're illegal. That's the word, illegal aliens. They're not legal. And Trump was right. Well, what about the children? The children. Kick them all out. If they're not here legally, they need to go. He was right. And I think for the most part, all that banter's quieted down quite a bit. So I think they found out that he was right and they were wrong. And Trump has instincts, and he's been right on every single thing thus far. So we need to listen, and we need to ask questions, and we need to be inquisitive about everything that comes out of any elected official's mouth, who are only controlled puppets by the political parties. So you have to understand that first, that these are just puppets. That's all they are. They've been bought and paid for since the first day they got elected to office. They had a luncheon when they first got to Washington, D.C., and the party leaders took them out for a little lunch and an indoctrination how things were going to be done now that he was a congressman or a senator or what have you, and they were going to be in charge now. Not those dummy hens that elected you. What do they count? That's over with. You've been elected. Now your deal is you have to stay elected. So you're going to have to win your re-election, and it's going to take us to do that. And you're going to need us. You don't need those people back home that voted for you anymore. They're done. You need us. And they buy them. Right there and then. They buy you. And that's the way this country has worked for decades. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop. We need to take our country back. And we need to stop the corruption. And we need to uphold the laws of this country. We need to look at the black and white law as written. It went through a procedure to become a law in this country. Some laws have gone all the way up the ladder to the highest court in the land, which is the Supreme Court of the United States. And once that court makes a ruling, you have nowhere else to go. You have to live with that ruling. That becomes the law of the land. And Congress could do something about it. They have a branch of government, the legislative branch, the law, judges and the Supreme Court falls under the judiciary, which is a branch, and then you have the executive branch, which is the president. And all of these branches have power of their own right, and they also have checks and balances over the other branches, that if one of the other branches steps off the rails and does something not according to the law, then these other branches have authority to do something about it. And that's the law of the land. That's the way the Constitution was founded. And that's what works in this country. And that's what works in any lawful society, is you have to have laws and you have to have checks and balances. And the laws not only need to be there so people know how to live their lives by what's already gone before them in black and white, because they have to know what's right, what's wrong. And then if someone breaks the law, it needs to be enforced. Now, especially needs to be enforced if the people doing the breaking of the law are people in charge of enforcing the law. Then you'd have no law. If you're not going to enforce the law against someone who breaks the law, then you have no law. And this is something that the enforcers in this country are failing to realize, or they realize it but they don't care, because the people of the country, us hens, they really work for us. But what are we going to do about it if these enforcers don't do their job and enforce the law? What are we going to do about it? We're just little old hens. We would have to go, what, to the judiciary to get them to enforce the law? And they're just as crooked as the enforcers? Where does the enforcement come from when the enforcers don't do their job? That's my question. Think about it. We're not a country of laws unless we enforce our laws. And that's been my big question in the case that I have before the Nevada Appellate Court, is we have laws. Where's the law? And who's going to enforce the law? As a matter of fact, technically, the way the law reads, if a judge makes a ruling that is contrary to a United States Supreme Court previous ruling, we are actually a country of precedences. And for economical sense, feasibility, we should be as concise and quickly for economic justification. Anything that's been ruled before, we shouldn't have to rule on it again if the facts are exactly the same or similar. So, if the Supreme Court of the United States has made a ruling, a decision on a particular set of circumstances that's exactly the same, then if a judge violates or rules contrary to that previous ruling under the principle of stare decisis, then that's a void ruling because that issue's already been decided. And a judge can't just rule contrary to that. A judge cannot make law. A judge has to follow the law. And in my particular case, I think it should be the poster child for corruption and judges that don't follow the law. Because the basics of my particular issue is whether a state can control property in another state. Now, that goes back hundreds of years in this country, and we've only been here basically since 1776. Well, in 1811, a case came up between a guy named Livingston and a guy named Jefferson. Jefferson, as in Thomas Jefferson, our third president of the United States. Anyways, this guy Livingston had property in Louisiana, and Jefferson was trying to trespass on his land. Somehow, I forget the specifics of the case, but it doesn't matter because trespass is trespass. And Livingston sued Jefferson in the state of Virginia to get him to stop trespassing on his land because apparently Jefferson was a resident of Virginia. Well, when it went to the court, and a guy named Marshall, Justice Marshall, who went on, I guess, maybe even to the Supreme Court level or whatever. This was way back in the beginning of the time in the United States. He ruled that the property that was the issue of this lawsuit was located in Louisiana. So the lawsuit had been filed in Virginia. Well, Virginia has no power to make any judgment over land in Louisiana because it's outside of its territory, and it couldn't control any decision that it makes or any judgment, had no way of enforcing it. So from that on, it was called the local action doctrine. It's what it became known as. And from then on, anytime there was a court action in one state, they had to have subject matter jurisdiction over what they were ruling on, or they had no reason to be ruling because it wouldn't hold up. That's fundamental. I mean, this is such a well-known principle. I guarantee you could not become a judge in this country if you didn't know this. I mean, you have to pass legal bars just to become a lawyer, and that's usually the first stepping stone before you become a judge. But, this is, you can ask 99 out of 100 people, and maybe those 100 people aren't lawyers, any one of them, but 99 people will tell you, no, you can't control property not within your territory. Of course not. And this judge made a ruling in Nevada to sell a home in New Hampshire. You can't do that. Then on top of that, the home in New Hampshire was held in a trust, an estate trust, a spendthrift trust that was created and housed in New Hampshire under the laws of New Hampshire, and it held a home in New Hampshire. New Hampshire, New Hampshire, New Hampshire, not Nevada. So the only reason this case was ever brought to Nevada was because one of the parties involved, as the defendant, had transferred money from New Hampshire to Nevada and stuck it in their bank account and was siphoning off funds left and right as quick as they could to steal all the money. So a case had to be filed here because the records were here. Number one, we had to have access to those before we could make our claim that things were being misappropriated. And of course, once we did get the records, showed conclusively that the suit was correct, that indeed misappropriation was going on, sometimes 3 times in the same day. So that case was won. Now the defendant, had no way of paying their lawyer, and they had a real ambulance chasing type lawyer anyways, who never had a big case ever. He was busy with dog cases, dog bites, and accidents, and ambulance chaser. But anyways, he had no way of getting paid, so he goes to his judge buddy. I don't know what deal was done in the back room there, but I know what was done was totally illegal. And now the judge's main concern becomes the issue of how to pay this lawyer that lost the case. Well, in the United States, there's a thing called the American rule. And the American rule is that nobody pays the other party's legal fees unless there's a statute or something that dictates otherwise. Most judges are bound to rule that both parties pay their legal fees, and the winner doesn't pay the loser, and the loser doesn't pay the winner. Now, that's contrary to most other countries in the world that have a legal system. They call it the loser pays system. So if you sue somebody and you lose the case, you've were wrong, and you've unjustly caused that innocent defendant a lot of money in legal fees and so forth, and you caused them damages by virtue of your lawsuit. So you have to pay his legal fees. That's the way every other country in the world works except for this one. And the reason we don't work that way is because the lawyers have gotten together and call it unionizing or whatever, but they got their own people in Washington, D.C. that are lobbyists that lobby for this American rule. And under the American rule, each side pays their own fees. So what that means is when you sue somebody, even if you lose, you don't have to pay that winner's party's legal fees. So that allows the caseload, if you will, of these lawyers to double, because they don't have to worry about losing a case. They're going to get paid probably either way. Now you have these lawyers that run around looking for cases because they have to pay their light bill and stuff, and they go after the tobacco companies, they go after deep pockets, they go after the drug companies all the time. I'm sure you've seen these ads on TV, call this 800 number, or that one, and it's asking you if you or a relative of yours has died because you're taking the blah blah pill. Call this number, you may be entitled to damages, and so forth, and the number you're calling is some lawyer that's trying to get a class action suit against these drug companies. Well, what happens is that puts a lot of pressure on the drug companies to defend themselves, and by pressure I mean expense. That's one of the reasons medications cost so much, is because of all the litigation and because of these lawyers that are trying to pay their light bill on the backs of people that need the proper medications, and why they're so expensive because of the litigation. So it's a way that these lawyers can extort money from a legitimized company by just making a claim that now that company has to defend themselves. Now, if the legal system was set up to where the loser pays, well, you better be damn sure that you're going to win a case and you have a good cause before you sue somebody. Because if you lose and the person you sued ends up being right, they're going to come after you for their legal fees. And that's going to really, really cost you, because you're not going to get anything. You're going to lose. And like I said, that's the way every other country is in the world except this one. And it's this way because our legal system has been hijacked by these lawyers who have got these lobbyists working for them in Washington, D.C. to take all the legislators and whoever they have to bribe out to lunch, fly them to Bermuda for a weekend, or however they do it, is what they do, and they make sure that they have this legislation all the time that protects the lawyers. And that's not a country with a judiciary that can be trusted. Now, my story was written a few weeks ago by the editor here, and it was a picture of the United States, and it showed the integrity of the courts and the public's access to that information. And they rated various parts of any state government, the legislature, the judiciary, the executive, and they broke it down into departments, and they put a letter grade next to how they rated compared to other states. Well, there's only 4 states in this country that rated better than an F. And judiciary in particular, the Nevada judiciary got a big fat F, as did New Hampshire's judiciary, got a big fat F. So why is that? It's because the courts no longer have any integrity to uphold the law. They don't uphold the law. And my case is the perfect example. And it's the poster child for it because the facts have been so well documented in this particular case, because I'm not your average plaintiff. I won. I was right. I was proven right. I got the judgment that I wanted, where the other party, the defendant, was removed for cause as a trustee because they were stealing money. Simple as that. Simple case with a simple outcome. Except now we got the new wrinkle. We have this lawyer that wants to be paid, and he has no right to be paid. He wasn't the prevailing party. His client lost. His client had to return money that she stole, so she lost that. And she didn't get anything. She got nothing, 0. So that being on the books, where do we go from here? The judge, not knowing a damn thing about trust law, apparently, not a clue, he makes a judgment that the biggest issue now before the court is how to pay the legal fees. Well, that particular cause is not before the court at all. Because in America, the American rule means both sides pay their own legal fees. That should have been it. Good night, Irene. Now, I'd been paying my legal fees all along. The defendant never paid a nickel in legal fees because she'd written a check from the trust account to pay her lawyer a retainer, and then the lawyer kept going back and back before the judge, trying to get more money from the trust, and the judge, rightfully so, wouldn't give him any money because the case hadn't even been heard yet. And then the judge does another weird thing, because this judge was just off the wall. In the middle of the trial, after the defendant was on the stand and got decimated, just torn up one side and down the other, because they had no justification for what they had done, stealing the money. We had the bank records. It was just conclusive proof. So she was just beaten to hell in the stand. The lawyer witnessed this, her lawyer, and the next moment he jumps up when she's off the stand and demands to be paid $100,000, or he's walking out and not coming back. So he's holding up, I guess, the court, the whole system, for money. And he should have been not laughed out of court. He should have been thrown out of court and told not to come back, ever. Because what are you trying to do? Extort money from the court? You're going to give the judge an ultimatum? Well, this judge, in his incompetency that he exhibited all over the place, decides, after saying he couldn't do what he was being asked to do, he decides to do it. Unexplainable. I mean, this judge was weird. So my lawyer makes all kinds of objections, all on very verifiable and solid grounds, all denied. And when it became apparent that this judge was going to do this anyways, even though it was totally illegal and contrary to trust law and any law, he made the statement that, well, if you're going to award fees on one side of the aisle over here to the defense, the plaintiff over here is paid out of his own pocket thousands and thousands of dollars, and he would need to be awarded the same thing. And the judge, in his incompetency, said, well, the only problem with that is there's not enough money for both. What a brilliant judge. Unbelievable. I heard that statement and over my head. Anyways, at the end of that day, I was downstairs in the garage, parking garage, yelling and screaming at my lawyer, what in the hell is going on with this kangaroo court? This judge does not have a clue what he's doing. And my lawyer's only response was, well, you heard my objections. Yeah, I know you're always trying to defend what you do, and you can't defend this law because there is no law. So I said, well, you didn't get paid anything. You didn't get any of my money back, so I don't have any more money to pay you. And I'm not going to pay another dime in this deal anyways because this is a kangaroo court. So, okay, trial went on, and at that point, I think my lawyer started to jump ship because of the award that the judge had made to this defense attorney was an illegal award of attorney fees in the middle of a trial, which is unheard of. That's unprecedented. I can't find any incident where that's ever happened. And at any rate, my lawyer decides, well, maybe he'll just shut up and see what happens, because if I'm not going to pay him, he'll just be quiet and maybe this dumb judge will pay him. Well, long story short, that's basically what happened. My lawyer really stopped representing me and started just being quiet. And this judge, when he made his ruling, deciding to pay all the lawyers, including my lawyer, I guess thinking that would give him some sort of cover. I don't know what that was all about. But anyways, he couldn't pay any lawyer because by statute, you can't pay or you can't attack the corpus of a trust to pay legal fees from, because the trust money technically is being held for the beneficiary's benefit and no one else, and no creditor, nobody can attack a trust to get at that money because it's not even the beneficiary's money yet. It's dead people's money. So there's no cause of action against a dead person. So there's no way for anybody to go and attack any assets held in trust. The only time that a move could be made on any of those assets is after the trustee distributes assets to the hands of the beneficiary. Once the beneficiaries receive something, then I guess a creditor could go after it. But prior to that, you can't. And the law is so strong on trust law that if you file bankruptcy, you don't even have to disclose any assets held in trust because they're not your assets. That's just an anticipation or an expectancy, as they call it, for something at some future date. Until you get it, it's nothing. So nobody can rely upon that. And the bankruptcy court doesn't even ask that it be declared on a bankruptcy because it's not your money. This is simple, basic, fundamental law. And it goes back for centuries. This goes back to like before the Roman days. I mean, it's really, really old stuff. And it's always held up in the United States anyways. And for example, there was a case in 1878 called Penowa versus Neff that was an issue over property in a state. And the ruling there was that no state can control property in another state, and referred to Livingston versus Jefferson. Then in 1958, there was a case that emanated out of Florida, a trust case, and the lady that died in Florida had a trust that was always housed in Delaware. And I think it consisted of about $400,000 worth of stock that a trustee, a bank I think it was holding in Delaware. So the physical stock was in Delaware, not Florida. So Florida wanted that $400,000 so they could probate this lady's trust and will down in Florida so they could get their pound of flesh, I guess. And they ruled, the Florida Supreme Court ruled, that that money had to come to Florida. Well, there were some beneficiaries that didn't agree with that, so they filed an appeal with the Supreme Court of the United States, which took the case. And the Supreme Court's decision, to start with, was one paragraph. It referred to Penowa versus Neff as being 100 years prior we've never been asked to make any ruling on one state trying to control another state's property because that was considered a nullity. And for good reason, is what they wrote in the paragraph. And it is. It goes to subject matter jurisdiction. If you don't have control of the property, then there's nothing you can do about that. So any judgment made attempting to control property from one state to another is null and void. So they ruled against this particular Florida Supreme Court, and that was it. And that's been the law of the land here in the United States, which was the law of the land in Penowa versus Neff, and was the law of the land since Livingston versus Jefferson. So since 1811, that's been the law of the land. And this Judge Earl, district court judge here in Nevada, didn't know that? Pathetic, pathetic. At any rate, that's the way the law is. Nevada can't do anything about it. I've appealed the judgment that the Earl made where he dictated that the home be sold. I went to New Hampshire and I sold the home as a result of this judgment to protect the assets of the trust. That's my obligation as trustee. I have to protect the trust. And the language in all the statutes of trust law in New Hampshire and Nevada too specifically says that any trust is not under the control of a court, and that they cannot attack the corpus of a trust assets. And this is exactly what this Nevada judge was trying to do, was pay money to his lawyers so they could turn around and contribute to the campaigns of judges, I guess, in this state to get the funds available to pay the lawyers. And you can't do that. You just simply can't do that. That's not the law of the land. So just like that Kim Davis clerk in Kentucky that went to jail, Judge Earl should be in jail too for even attempting to do this. But then this judge went a step further, way, way beyond a step further, because I got control of the money by selling the home and holding the money in trust for the beneficiaries. And my goal was once all this mud cleared up and Judge Earl made a final order that could be appealed, I would appeal it, and when that was over, then I'd buy another house with this money that I had held in trust to do so. Because those were the wishes of my mother, was that the beneficiaries have usage of the house in New Hampshire. That was her goal, and that's my goal too. So I've been holding, so to protect the money, knowing that this judge was going off the rails, I asked the banker how to protect the money, because I have a judge that's totally out of control, and he's making orders that are invalid orders, they're void, and how do you beat that? And he said the bank has to honor any order until the final decision comes in. So I go, well, that's nice. So you tie up all my money and this and that, and it's in limbo with this judge making all these funny deals. So I said, well, give me the money in cash. So the banker says, well, I don't think you want to carry around that much money in cash. Why don't you just get a cashier's check, and it's the same thing. So he convinced me that a cashier's check, as long as I held that check, that nobody could do anything about it. So I got a cashier's check, and I've been holding it ever since. And this case is not over with because I had to appeal this case. I don't know why I had to appeal it, because the orders are void by a United States Supreme Court decision, but I appealed on a couple other little grounds. So anyways, that's the way we went, and I did appeal it. So we're awaiting a decision now. In the meantime, this judge finds out from the bank that the only way a bank will stop payment on a cashier's check, the one that I was holding, was that if the check was lost, destroyed, or stolen. Well, it's none of the above, but that doesn't stop a judge who thinks he is the law. So he tells this losing defense attorney to sign an affidavit attesting to the fact that the check's lost. Well, that's a lie. It's totally fraud. The check's not lost. The bank knew the check wasn't lost. Everybody knew the check wasn't lost. But the bank, looking for an out, says, well, if the judge signs an order attesting to that fact, then we'll go ahead and send replacement money to Nevada. So that's what's done. The judge breaks the law, creates a Class A felony by doing it, punishable up to 30 years in jail and $1 million fine. Serious stuff, serious stuff. And this judge does it under the color of law. by wearing the black robe that he wears, he has authority. So that causes the innocent parties, in this case me and the other beneficiaries, tremendous amount of strife, because now we have to wait for some other black robe somewhere to rule and say that that can't be done when it's already been ruled that it can't be done by the Supreme Court of the United States. So this is just outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. But this is what these court systems have become. Totally unreliable. They have no integrity. That's why Nevada gets an F. And here we are, sitting here 6 years, going on 7. What a pathetic, pathetic country we've come when you can't go to a court for simple access to records to prove a point. And I did that. I won. I'm the prevailing party. I'm listed as the creditor, judgment creditor, and I'm entitled to have control of the trust. I'm named in the trust documents as a successor trustee, so I have property rights. And those property rights are governed and guaranteed under Article 14 of our Constitution. So these judiciary, and Judge Earl in particular, is making huge, huge mistakes of law. And so much so that he's lost his immunity. And his day will come, because I have various enforcement agencies who are reluctant to do anything at the moment because everything is kind of like under appeal. It's really, doesn't have to really be that way, but it is. So anyways, this will all come crumbling down when the laws are finally upheld, because the laws have been on the book for hundreds of years. So it's not going to be changed over this, and there's no reason to change it, because everything was done according to my case, and what I was asking for was 100% correct, and it was proven so. So we'll see what happens. In the meantime, we'll keep you abreast of it. To me, I'm involved in it personally, but it goes way beyond me, because the reason I'm going through the effort I'm going through is to try to help other people in this country that are going through similar things. And we can't stand for this. It goes way, way deeper than this case. This goes to everything, the heart of the whole judicial system. So we have to get this straightened out, and we will. But unfortunately, it takes time. And that's why we have to come up with some solutions that alleviates the time necessary to straighten something out like this. We need panels. We need tribunal panels in every city that has the authority to straighten out bad decisions, because they're coming fast and furious, and more of them all the time. So let's get together and figure out how to do this.
My country, 'tis of thee.